everything is okay and there's nothing else that is happening. And it's a trend internationally, It's a trend that is occurring internationally. What the pandemic forced me to do was to explore what you call it alternate media. People had a different perspective in terms of interpreting the news, in terms of presenting. Some just presented everything that was happening instead of the curated stories that said it's okay, like what happened with the pandemic with a lot of things. Are there alternative cures? Is it only the vaccine that will help people? And you saw, oh wow, there's a deliberate attempt to curate it and say this is what we want it to do. So just follow that. And people are saying there are alternative ways of dealing with what has happened with the pandemic. Because I saw a news item and I mentioned it to you last week. The last check was 5 million people have died because of COVID directly. But then WHO was saying it's more 15 million that they said because people would have died because they couldn't go to hospital and so on. So I said, okay, all right. And how do you interpret that kind of a news? If you say cancer, 5 million, but because you couldn't have been able to access cancer treatment, then
Because you're poor.
yes. No man, this the media. So look at the paper today, ban up in smoke.
Oh, the Sunday, that's the Sunday
Saturday
paper.
ban up in smoke. It's important smoking, but we're not enforcing it. And I think that was the trust of that art. But there are other things that are happening. Like we never saw in response in terms of the fact that the government sitting on a power keg in terms of the fact that the workers are saying no man.
What is it, 30,000?
30,000 people
30,000 public service workers.
are up in
Yeah, I
arms.
think the number is 30,000. When you have one group of 30,000 people who are unhappy and they're all unhappy about the same thing, and there is one target, that is a disastrous situation
Waiting to
for
happen.
any country.
Yeah.
And we saw how far-reaching and how inconvenient it was for just the water.
People.
Yeah, people. And then, I mean, we see NHT. Can you imagine NHT people were on strike too? So listen, I expect at this time that citizens would be
So frustration last week. Remember
we'd
that?
be getting a lot more. Well, the truth about it is, as you said, Pastor, I'm gonna take that back even before I say it. We need to inform ourselves.
Yes.
We need to get a right understanding of these issues and how it's gonna affect us. And we need to choose to stand with the people who have been oppressed and marginalized and who are suffering and not see them as enemies. So when like NWC went off, some people were saying, but why didn't turn off the water and why they we should instead be saying, but if the government knows there are issues, meaning the leaders know that there are issues, why don't they have contingency plans in place to ensure some level of continuity? The same way they require us to have continuity plans in place so they can continue to collect tax dollars. Why don't they plan for services to continue? We're keeping an army at great expense. Why aren't we better prepared for some of these things when we know full well that we have issues in dispute, that workers are not happy? But the thing that has got to me most of all in all this is the lack of good faith
Yeah, that to me
in
is the
how
more
our
damning
government
condemnation of
does
what
business, yeah,
yes,
on
of
our
what has
behalf.
happened.
Lack of good faith.
Yeah, man, you can't like you said, okay, sign, and then you hear, oh, we take away the concession.
Yes, man. Even as you are signing,
you-
so there's a man in the back room calculating how to remove it from you. And so I think that's what's gonna tear us down. It is not the awful reality that we broke and we don't have money to do things the right way. It's
Bad
not
faith.
that, because most people, when confronted with the awful truth, their mind shift to planning. How do I change this? Like you mentioned Cuba, and I always remember my first time in Cuba. Could only get sugar in the hotels. No sugar, then nobody home.
Because it was for expert.
It was for expert or for visitors.
Mhm.
And I never know nobody in the company. And sure, you had a little book thing of how you can get some, like you go into, like, I remember went to a nightclub or something, and there were some really young girls in there, and the men were reporting that the girls were asking for things like toothpaste and toilet paper. So yes, you will have that. And it was just it was very sad to see these very beautiful young girls who um that was they were trading.
Yes, I know.
Yeah, it was heartbreaking.
Yeah, I
But
know.
so that was their reality. But people could get behind, citizens could get behind a very harsh and inconvenient restriction, because they understood that we need to have foreign exchange to get XYZ based on our what's
Reality.
happening or reality. So people will get behind
Speak truth.
if you speak truth and you are speaking it consistently, then better not seeing you telling them fit over there. And in the other corner, you're spending $30 million post a conference for people in the diaspora.
Would
Why
fund the
we don't have sufficient sponsorship for it? There are many West Jamaicans in the diaspora.
Do it.
And there are many local companies that make a
do
lot of
come
money
out
out of the diaspora.
Yeah.
But Jamaica, we spend $30 million on that, and we can't keep faith with civil servants who keep the engines running day after day. So integrity becomes an important thing. But still, you can say, yes, I've been lying to you for 1,000 years. I want to start with the truth today. Take a chance on me. Why we not have that ability? So
We're
things are
afraid.
coming to bump. Truth to Power says non-traditional media is the name that you are looking for.
Yeah, because they get a lot of things. And again, as we approaching the date where everybody is getting ready to go to Geneva. It's Geneva to sign this
Oh, the WHO foolishness.
It's not foolishness, no. I think it's a major cog in the wheel to what the World Economic Forum and the elitists are trying to achieve in the world today.
What is it? The foolishness of God is better than the greatest wisdom of the world.
Yeah.
Truth to Power says, good morning. I think someone should let some of bright people in Jamaica who existed before Nigel Clark give him some humility. I think he is obsessed with his perceived brightness.
Wow.
My favorite pastor,
Humility.
well, outside of Jamaica.
Yeah,
You gotta leave your place intact.
Humility.
Yes.
I was talking to somebody about it on the weekend.
Pastor Lucas said the world is moving like when you leave children to run the village.
That's what he said.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
If you leave children to run the village, everybody is. And you saw it is out of scripture too. The children, one who was saying, we played music for you, but you did not dance.
Yes.
And that's the kind of peeve that you're seeing with some of our leaders. They take it personally if you don't fall in love and worship at their feet.
Isn't we have a word for it, you know?
Narcissistic, yes.
In their nature. Yeah.
Yeah. What you were saying.
Yeah, so you lost my train of thought.
I love it. It's your
bit-
train.
no, my train, but
All right, while you're finding it, I want to mention something that is of interest too. I know we have a couple of listeners who have been putting up with some severe nuisance, noise pollution in their neighborhoods to the point where it has become an interference with their property rights. But what has been distressing is not the lawless Jamaicans who have no discretion and regard for the health and well-being of their neighbors, but it is the lack of response from
the authorities.
the authorities. My good friend who listens to this program, and I need to follow through with
You're gonna follow
something
through with her,
I
yeah.
promised to do. Her mother is an octogenarian,
Wow.
has lived in the Paddington Terrace area for probably over 50 years. That's the first place she went married, and that's, she's been widowed there now for probably longer than she was married. Someone in the neighborhood, and I hear that possibly it is an attorney who owns the property or who's renting the property. Someone in her neighborhood has started a doggy daycare. And she's had to put up with the howling and the barking and the noise and the offensive odors of the waste that comes from that property. That's been going on now for about more than a year, because I've known about it for the better part of a year. Reports have been made to the KCMC. They're not certainly making speeches about it. We are about to rename our street. Reports have been made. The health, I certainly was told too that she needed to take to some office on Maresca Road, public health office. They've taken pictures, they've made videos there, and it continues unabated. Except that I think the little they have made some special arrangements to cart away the garbage, but it's unsightly. But at least they've done something about that. In today's paper, Garth Rattray is writing about the many victims of loud noise, and he, as a medical practitioner, has cited some of the ailments that have resulted from
Insomnia.
it. Yes, he said, because of my job, I see the victims of loud noises, the resultant insomnia, and several serious physical and mental problems that follow. Several patients and their families outline egregious conditions, but a few stand out in my mind. An elder couple living in a residentially zoned neighborhood was unfortunate because the house immediately next door was rented by someone who did manufacturing. Because it's extremely difficult to get the government to remedy the situation, the couple suffered through the daily din of deliveries from large and noisy trucks and the loud machinery noises throughout the nights. Pleading with their neighbor fell on deaf ears. Finally, eventually, the lady of the house became ill as a direct result of lack of sleep. I was seeing her for her suddenly recalcitrant hypertension. When I was diagnosed as hypertensive a long time ago, I was told that the greatest contributor was lack of sleep.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Failure to rest properly.
Mhm.
Headaches, dizziness, anxiety, depression, bad feelings, palpitations, and numerous near faints. She was visiting emergency rooms frequently since their neighbors started the business next door. Out of desperation, her husband went to the Kingston and St. Andrew Municipal Corporation to make a formal complaint and appeal for help. As soon as he arrived back home, the owner operator of the factory accosted him and told him that he knew that he was coming from complaining about him to the KSAMC. That spoke volumes about why nothing had been done about the multiple breaches. There was always a KSAMC excuse about not being able to find the owner and leaving notices. Things got so bad that the lady had to abandon her home and seek refuge in her church at nights in order to preserve what was left of her declining health. The doctor, I even wrote to the mayor of at the time, but nothing ever happened. Luckily, the factory appeared to have outgrown the premises. Peace returned, and the lady's health was restored. And he has other stories there. We have a listener in the Angels Estate vicinity that, oh my God.
And it goes back to a fundamental issue of governance. If you have laws, you enforce the laws because areas are zoned for different things. Is that correct?
Yes, yes.
You know that in terms of your
That's
legal
a
training.
legal, yeah.
Yeah, and so if you're gonna change it, you need to do that. Even with a lot of the construction that is happening in some communities, you go to Meadowbrook Estates, that place, and you see a house there. The next thing is an apartment complex going up, and people are complaining and saying, "What is happening here?" Not stepping against progress, but there are rules and regulations that need to be followed. So come on, come on, come on. Why is it that we are not enforcing the laws? Because it's for everybody. They never just came out of thin air. They were put in place out of the command for the common good and welfare of the citizens. We're going to change it. We need to inform, have consultation, that people know what is happening and what is beginning to happen. But there's no law. It is as it says in Judges. Everybody did what was right. Everybody didn't do
Israel
what.
had no king.
Yes, and it
Everybody did as
it
they
was
felt
right in their
like.
own eyes.
And
Just enforcement.
yeah,
man.
if you read Mr. Rattray's article, he gives like multiple examples or case reports of patients who have been coming to him, same problem, and unfortunately, elderly couples or senior citizens don't have the luxury of staying in their property and just enjoying any kind of quiet time because for various reasons. And as I said, it's not about the lawless individuals who will take chances and do whatever they feel like. But we have institutions set up to monitor, to police, to enforce. And this one seemed to escape them all the time, everywhere. Last night I called a lady and I thought she was at a party. So I said, "Oh, I see you're out." She said, "No, no. She lives in on Acadia Drive, and right behind her is Grand Spen."
Okay.
And she says the noise from no amount of calling, no amount of imploring the authorities can get it shut down. They just play music. Here, the doctor is singing. But part of the problem for this elderly couple too was the lyrics, the filthiest lyrics imaginable. And that continued throughout curfew, pandemic curfew, and to this day, to this blessed day, nothing has been done.
It's freedom of expression. Why don't you leave it alone? That's what it is.
But that's not freedom of expression.
Yes, because free text
What
speak
is-
anything about.
Yeah, do you mean the filthy lyrics?
Yes.
Oh no, it's the loud filthy lyrics. Sure, you can have your filthy lyrics,
Okay.
but when it is, I mean, there are laws about. I know what you're saying. There
Yeah,
are laws
I'm
about
just saying that people
about
say,
noise
man,
pollution.
free for do what you want
Yeah.
to do. Why you not demand them alone?
Years
No, man.
ago, when I had an apartment on Lenny Avenue, and there used to be a church operating under a tent in Barbican Square. They
And then
used to have.
put out the blares.
Oh my goodness!
With everything
2
that's-
a.m. They
2
are
a.m.?
praising the Lord and beating drums.
2 a.m.?
Of course, they used to have their something they were doing, conference or
2
what's
a.m.?
yes. What is the thing called when you make a special appeal?
Convocation evangelistic crusade?
Crusade.
At 2 a.m. in the morning?
What do you mean?
2 a.m.?
So your church never have anything that
Yes,
go
sir.
past? Yeah. 2 a.m. them calling people to, that's like when the altar call get really hot. I think anyway, I would call the police. I called the police many times on that church. Eventually I moved. But you
What?
know, it wasn't like but it was used to be on weekends when they were doing some special thing. And it just went on, and the tambourines, and it was terrible.
Make a joyful noise unto the Lord. All ye
Terrible.
hands.
That is
At 2
joyful for
o'clock,
you.
2 a.m. in the morning.
Anything past midnight is too noisy for me.
Seriously?
Take it
2
down.
a.m.?
Yeah, man.
My Lord.
And so you would have like dances and so on going on, and you could hear the two sounds and the two, and then
Just
after a while
competing.
they were competing.
Oh
Anyway, the
wow.
point I'm making is that yes, we understand that civil servants need better wages and so on, but don't we don't need to take away from that case by refusing to address problems that are causing true damage to the citizens who own and are seeking to enjoy their land. By that I mean, if your job is to ensure that certain regulations
Adhere to.
are obeyed, you don't really need a complaint. You should be patrolling the city. You should have your ways of checking that communities are not being terrorized by those who feel like anything goes. I shouldn't need to complain.
Mhm.
There should be a system in place
That-
that is monitoring it.
mhm. And the point is, deal with the small things. The bigger things
The bigger things will take care of
of
themselves.
themselves. So we are not advocating that these things must happen, but we are saying there is a framework of reference that these things should operate in. True.
All right. So before we take the break,
2 a.m. I
I
can't
want
forget
to.
that. About 2 a.m. They
Well,
never go to work the following day.
well, once
Sure.
they do this, like Saturday night, they used to do their crusades.
Oh, come on. 2 a.m. All right.
Right. Pastor, I want us to talk a little bit about what we would like to see in place, looking back at the public sector negotiations and building a relationship of trust and just, respect and honor in space, recognizing that Jamaica as a business, we used to call it the Project Jamaica. Yes,
Project
stuff
Jamaica,
like that.
it still is.
Yeah, recognizing that Project Jamaica need to have a secretariat,
Mhm.
an admin team
Mhm.
that is well motivated to stay the course and to give us the best service that they can as we make the transition, because we are transitioning to something way better than where we are now. Um, I'm inviting you to prophesy. I just want us to do a forecast of what we're looking for. I'd started by saying that the trade unions
Mhm.
and the role they play in safeguarding the interest of labor. Last week I was looking at
Labor laws.
labor, yes, but I just went into the International Labor Organization to look at some of the fundamentals of the Convention on Workers' Rights, and so I was much as I looked at the Convention on the Right of the Child, I found that there is a recognition that with prenatal rights. So it is that there are some conditions to prepare. There's a need to prepare the labor force from training
Mhm.
before an individual becomes a worker or an employer.
Mhm.
There is a lot of preparatory work that needs to be done, and it has to be addressed both currently and prospectively.
True.
Meaning the employee who agrees to be part of a trade union and is paying dues today
Mhm.
is paying dues for the safeguarding of his rights
Mhm.
and for the protection in the future.
True.
So trade unions need to do more, and they have as a part of their point of origin a larger frame of reference than just addressing the current needs of the worker today.
Mhm.
They have to take an interest
They have
in
to be
training.
proactive.
They have to be proactive.
Did not wait, because the truth is, what happened with globalization, which impacted a lot of trade unions, they heard it was coming. It has come, and a lot of them are still operating as if the marketplace internationally has not changed. So one of the things I would propose in terms of our trade union is the whole thing of the leadership being very proactive and understanding what it is, seeing the vision of where the market is going, and prepare their members for the reality that is coming down the road. That's the first thing, which requires leadership that is innovative, decisive, and not just waiting on something to happen to them, but are proactive and working with management to saying, this is what we're seeing, and we're inviting you to be a part of this partnership that people will still have jobs and people will still be able to survive and to tend for their families. But there's another thing that has been introduced into the whole thing, the whole thing of AI, artificial intelligence.
Mhm.
And how do the unions prepare for that really? Are they sufficiently knowledgeable about what it means in terms of ensuring ultimately human beings, or humans, which is at the center of creation, are able to dominate, to rule, and to replenish God's creation and big stewards of it? I know that's a mouthful, but it speaks to leadership that is ahead of the game, even ahead of the management too, in terms of looking at what's coming and preparing properly for it. What do you think?
Well, I think that the preparedness of the union
Mhm.
is directly linked to the preparedness of its members or individuals because it's a push-pull factor.
Correct.
If workers are not pulling from the union
Mhm.
what it is they want to see in the now and for the future,
Mhm.
then it is unlikely that the leadership of the union is going to give it focus.
Right.
So, and as you were speaking, I was also seeing that this umbilical connection between union and political party
Mhm.
has hurt the union because the union becomes a campaign tool
Yes.
for political parties, and after you get to power,
You forget.
you then realize that maintaining power is inimical to supporting union ideals and interests and so on, because when you come government now,
Have a bigger picture
you,
looking
you
at.
have a bigger picture, and suddenly the workers and the role that they can play in the country becomes
Secondary.
secondary to the interest capital. So it's like when you're looking for power, the employee is your friend because he has the vote.
Mm.
When you get into power, the employer becomes your friend because he has the money. So I'm just wondering what is the best way to transition from that place where the union is just a campaign
Two.
tool to one where it is truly
Partnership.
working to create value for citizens.
Mhm.
We got the signal for the break, and it's now 8 a.m. We are going to take our big break. Please remember when we come back, the numbers to call are 876-619-1508 and 876-279-8473. And if there's anyone in our listenership who knows why this civil rights leader from India is to be honored on a street in Kingston, I would love for you to call, say, what is the connection between this Indian civil rights leader and Kingston, Jamaica? Please stay with us. We'll be right back.
Press FM 100 on your dial. Keep listening.
BBC News. Hello, this is Jerry Smith. The McDonald's Corporation is selling its business in Russia in response to the war in Ukraine. The burger chain said the humanitarian crisis had made for an unpredictable business environment. Earlier, the French carmaker Renault said it was ending its own dealings in Russia. Theo Leggett reports.
Renault had initially resisted calls to leave Russia, but after the company, along with some the French businesses was directly criticized by Ukraine's President Zelensky for allegedly sponsoring the Russian